Remember that Aristotle advised us that when making a speech, we must study 3 points, the first being the methods of producing persuasion, and the second being related to language choice. The third of his 3 points was, in his words, the proper arrangement of the various parts of speech. And that will be our focus today. Specifically, we will discuss 2 organizational approaches to persuasive presentations that are based upon needs, and we will end with a discussion of some key ideas to succeed when you have to do a persuasive speech. 2 popular organizational structures that emphasize creating and satisfying needs are Monroe's motivated sequence and problem cause solution. You probably already remember ANSVA from the sales speech video, and you are probably at least somewhat familiar with the problem-solution format. The reason the word cause is set up by parentheses here is that some people tend to incorporate the cause in the problem section. For example, they will subdivide the problem into 2 or 3 points and discuss under each of the points what the problem is and then what causes the problem. Both of these structures focus on motivation, which you already know can be thought of as the extent to which we feel a need for something. And motivation can vary quantitatively. You can be highly motivated all the way down to very low motivation. Regardless of which approach you take, both require you to prove to us that there's something wrong with what is happening now. If you're using Monroe's motivated sequence, you focus on need. You need to prove to us that there is something happening that needs to be fixed. In a sales speech, you may identify that the products or the services that we use aren't sufficient, don't work, have significant disadvantages, etc. You may even show us that there isn't a product available yet to meet that need. In problem cause solution, the term is a problem. You establish a problem. In Monroe's motivated sequence, there are multiple steps in establishing a need. State the need means that you have to come right out and tell us what is wrong. It is a direct statement that describes an undesirable situation that could be or needs to be improved or strengthened. For example, we are so busy that we can't seem to fit everything we need to do in a 24-hour window. Would identify a need for perhaps something that might be making us more efficient. The next step is you illustrate the need. It means just that. Illustrate using 1 or more detailed examples showing that the problem is actually a fact. We don't have to take your word on it. You have evidence to help prove that there really is a need. Third, you would develop the need, or what Ellen Monroe would call ramification. Here you use additional examples, statistical data, and testimony that show how serious and widespread the problem or the need is. You might break the need step up into subpoints, for example, here. Perhaps the most important is the last one, which is relating the need, or what Monroe called pointing. Show how the problem affects the members of your immediate audience. Point to them. If you can't prove that it will affect me or my loved ones, then I'm less likely to do something about it. Problem cause solution is similar to Monroe's motivated sequence, but remember that we replace the term needs with problem. You establish that not only does a problem exist, but it is significant and thus worthy of our attention. It affects us, which is why we want to do something to solve the problem. There may be no solution now, or the current solutions are inadequate. In either case, the problem won't go away by itself or will get worse, so it requires a solution, and it requires that solution now. The cause part of this arrangement deals with why the problem exists. You can't fix a problem until you know what is causing it. Say, for example, you have a headache. That would be a problem. However, before we can come up with a solution for the headache, we need to determine what exactly is causing it. Is it allergies? Lack of sleep? The beginning of a flu? Each of those requires a different solution. The cause then determines what the appropriate solution will be, which is the next step. Remember that you can draw on what you have learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Festinger's concept of cognitive dissonance here. Thus, regardless of the organizational structure, you are essentially establishing a need for a solution. Next, you need to sell the solution. Show us that you can fix what is wrong. In Monroe's motivated sequence, you are satisfying a need, and in problem cause solution, you give us the what else? Solution to the problem. In either case, you show how the problem can be alleviated or solved or fixed. For every concern or problem that you establish in the previous need or problem step, you must be able to solve it in this step. Monroe identified 5 techniques to satisfy the need. The first is that you can use a direct statement of the action proposed. We need to, or you need to. Second, you would explain the proposed action and what it involves. Sometimes the action is complicated. In sales, this may involve giving us the particulars, where we can buy the product, how much it costs, etc. Then you need to show that the action is the logical and adequate solution to the problem. Show that it is the best solution. You would also answer any major objections that the audience may have. In a face-to-face sales presentation, the audience is likely to have objections. In a speech where the audience doesn't actually ask any questions, you might want to preempt their objections, which means that you answer them in your speech before they actually raise them. And the last step Monroe puts here is that you need to support your arguments with testimony and show examples, if any, of how the solution worked elsewhere. In problem-cause-solution, you'll use those same techniques. If you are addressing a societal problem like, say, illiteracy, consider a two-pronged solution. What can the audience do to help solve the problem, and what should others, like businesses or government, do to help solve the problem? Why both types of solutions? Because if we can't help with illiteracy, why did you tell us about this problem in the first place? We can't do anything to help. And if it really is a large-scale problem, the few people in your audience are not likely to be able to solve the problem. Some other person or organization will need to get involved. So you would need a combination then of what we can do and what they, government, industry, health professionals, can do to really affect change. At the end of this section, you would want to leave us with a sense of optimism that your solution will work, as long as it's implemented quickly and appropriately. If the situation really is completely hopeless, then your audience is not likely to be moved to do anything. All you've done is persuade them that the chance of solving the problem are slim. Visualizing success means to look into your crystal ball and see what the future will hold. With problem-cause-solution, you may have already addressed this at the end of the solution step, but you might choose to include it or reinforce it as part of your conclusion. And in either case, you can take some tips from the visualization step in Monroe's motivated sequence. Monroe felt so strongly about the necessity of providing visualization that he called it out as a separate step. There are 3 techniques. The positive method is visualizing success. Look at what wonderful things we can look forward to if we bought your product or adopted your solution. The negative method is the opposite, emphasizing that if we don't buy your product or adopt your solution, our needs will continue to be unmet or the problem will still exist or perhaps even get worse. The combination method uses both techniques, but usually starts with the negative so that you can leave us with a feeling of hope. Then finally in Monroe's, you will end with a call to action. Ask again. Challenge your audience to act. Ask for the sale. And in problem-cause-solution, in the conclusion, your presentation should end with impact. Monroe's motivated sequence and problem-cause-solution are not the only structures that can be used for persuasive presentations. If you're designing a speech around a proposition of fact or value, you could use the topical or claim approach. Here you would identify the particular topics or claims that relate to a speech topic. For example, if you're trying to argue a murder case in a court of law, you know from all the TV shows that you have to establish motive, means, and opportunity. Now, the order is not particularly important. You could argue and establish motive either before or after you address the means. You could use comparative advantages when the audience has already accepted that there's a problem or a need. You would spend some time reminding them of the problem, but the bulk of your presentation would be spent comparing the advantages of one or more potential solutions proposed to address the problem. Criteria satisfaction also assumes that the audience has already acknowledged the problem exists. Now you establish criteria that you will then show how your solution meets. Again, you would need to briefly address the problem, and then before you suggest the solution, you identify the criteria the solution needs to meet. For example, you need to buy a car. You have identified several criteria that your new car needs to meet. It has to be reliable. It has to have decent gas mileage, accommodate 4 passengers in a wheelchair, and be priced at less than $30,000. Then when you consider a particular car, you will end up comparing that car against the criteria you have previously established. To increase the likelihood that you will succeed in your persuasive speech, pay attention to the following. First, consider the purpose, the assignment, and the audience. What are you trying to persuade? Does the assignment require you to cite a certain number of credible sources, or are you limited to personal experience or narratives? If you are limited to a policy speech on a serious, compelling social issue, not only will that affect your choice of topic, but your choice of organizational structure as well. Perhaps your professor has specified a particular organizational structure. You might be restricted to Monroe's motivated sequence, or she has required you to emphasize the need step. This will affect your choices as well. And don't forget the audience. Choose the topic, the appeals, and the structure that best affects the speaking situation. Mix it up means use a variety of support. Don't rely solely on statistics, for example. How boring. And if all you do is relate stories, your audience may question if they are isolated examples. Don't forget the theories of motivation that you can use, such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Fessinger's cognitive dissonance theory. Appeal to emotions. Put a face on the statistics. But don't forget that you need to present a logical and reasoned case for your proposition. Again, mix it up. We have to believe you know what you're talking about, that we can trust you, so work on a credible, confident, and sincere delivery style. Remember, if you don't sound like you believe what you're advocating, you're not persuaded yourself, then why should we be persuaded? It takes lots of practice to make sure that you can maintain eye contact while speaking, appear confident and relaxed, and speak smoothly without excessive reliance on notes. As the audience is the reason that you are delivering your persuasive presentations, you must keep them front and center in your mind. Tell us why it's important for us to, first, pay attention to what you're saying, and second, be persuaded. For example, if you are speaking to a group of college students about the serious issue of illiteracy in the U.S., why would they care? They already know how to read. Figure out a way to make this problem, this need, relate to them. Quiz time. What techniques can be used in the visualization step of Monroe's motivated sequence? What are the differences between Monroe's motivated sequence and the problem-cause-solution organizational structures? And what is the reasoning behind discussing a two-pronged solution for societal problems, the what we can do and what they can do? With a better understanding of the various organizational structures you can use, you are well on your way to designing an effective persuasive presentation.